Years ago, right? Years ago, I was having a conversation with a woman, right? We used to deal with each other way back. I was the one who took her virginity. And, we dealt with each other for like a summer fling, you know what I mean? Then I went back, got into a relationship. And, a couple years later, 2-3 years later, I think maybe like 2-3 years later, we were in a certain scenario to where I was on my game. I started, working on my rotation. I started getting out there, doing my thing. And before I could get back to dealing with her, right? And this is where I have more game. I didn't just walk away because I was in a place in my life where I just had this intense fear of being cheated on. Like, that thing was really intense. Like, I would think about different stories and scenarios like Ron and Hope Carpenter, and how those situations could be embarrassed. And just the fear in my mind was like, damn, what if this is a woman who's really good to you, right, overall, but she just had like a weak moment and that shit turned into something else. And then now you're in that place of embarrassment, but that's the woman you love. That's the woman who you really don't have too much of a reason not to be with her outside of the fact that she betrayed the trust and cheated, right? And especially if there's like other things involved, like depression or mental illness or something going on that's just making it like difficult for her, right? And that kind of thing used to just be very terrifying for me. And it's still a little scary, but it's not nearly as scary as it used to be. Sometimes as a man, you got to be honest, right? Now, she was dealing with this one guy. This dude was Toxic City, right? He knew what he was doing. And he was doing something. I learned something from her interactions with him. I would listen to the narratives and the stories of what was going on. And he was, textbook fuckboy. And just the way he went about things was sexual transmutation. No matter what emotion she was going through, no matter how she felt, no matter how upset or frustrated she got with him, it would just put her into a mind state to where he would know how to flip that energy into sexual energy so that she would get turned on, she would get horny, and that emotional roller coaster that she was going on was one that made her feel like the sex was just excellent, right? And I got as much information as I could get out of that because I was just in a place in my life where I was seeking to grow. See, guys, they can learn a lot by having conversations with women who are actually sexually attracted to them and having non-judgmental, real conversations. I remember one time me and her, we were having a conversation before we actually started back dealing with each other. Because when I started back dealing with her, I hit her on some biology first shit. I saw her on Snapchat. I hit her up and I was like, I'm gonna fuck you again. That's just how I hit her DMs. And she laughed it off and I was like, you think it's funny now, but it ain't gonna be funny later. Right? But then we ended up having some conversations, and when we had some conversations, she told me about how she had this dude she was fucking with, but the dude was real toxic and shit like that, right? And the dude would be like, tell her how much he liked her and he wanted to be with her, but they wasn't together and shit like that. But then he was saying, he didn't have a girlfriend, but it turned out he did have a girlfriend, and then the nigga got her and another girl pregnant at the same time. Like, the type of nigga toxic, like, take the condom off, don't tell her, nut into her, not say shit. And she still fucked with him because she liked that, right? One thing you gotta understand is that sperm does have, like semen, it has certain hormones and things in it that give a woman this calming effect. And he was the first dude to give her an orgasm, right? Because I remember when I first dealt with her, I took her virginity. At the time, she said she never even gave herself an orgasm before. And I spent most of my sexual experiences before then being heavily focused on trying to satisfy a woman. So for me at that time, I was like, you know what, I'm just going to do my thing. And I'm not going to worry too much about trying to figure out a woman's body who ain't even trying to figure her own body out, right? I was just like, when we first started fucking with each other, I think I was like 19 at the time when we first started fucking with each other. And then when we started back dealing with each other, I was 21. So at this time, how that situation went was that, I think she was with somebody else after me. And I did ask, because I asked. See, some dudes, they scared to ask. But I wanted to know, like, okay, how does size correlate to these things? So I was one of the bigger ones. And then there's another dude after me and one of her ex. And that nigga was huge. But she said that dude was deeply insecure. Like, every single girl he's been with has cheated on him. It was some shit like that. And he would constantly cheat on her. And it was funny. It's a small town shit. So she told me a story. He cheated on her with one of my exes, so I would not touch. That's funny to me. But over time, she said the dude, he wasn't super big. He was average. Dudes who like are really concerned with their dick size, understand that if you know how to touch a woman's emotions the right way, you know how to get her wrapped up in that emotional roller coaster, it'll do it. But what you have to understand is that if you're not purely sexually compatible, like on a straight up physical level, right, then if that woman gets to a place of security within herself, if she gets to a place of separating the emotions from the sex, then she's going to lose that sexual attraction she has to you. So the dude was really fucking her life up. She was going through depression. I think she might have had suicidal thoughts or something like that over the situation. And she was starting to fall out with her friends because her friends kept on telling her, just stop dealing with him. Just stop dealing with him. And she wouldn't listen, right? And the dude kept, fucking her up. So at the end of the day, she was just getting to a place where she was starting to fall out with her friends. And I think her friends were starting to get curious and wanting to try it too. It was just free, free advertisement. That's how that shit works. Because one thing to understand about women is if you keep going through shit with a nigga and you telling your girlfriends about what you're going through and you don't stop fucking with them and you telling them how good the dick is, in a woman's mind, the more you're willing to go through to have sex and continue dealing with somebody, the better the sex must be, right? That's really the measure, is how much you're willing to go through, right? How much pleasure you get and how much you're willing to go through. That's why oftentimes women associate being good at sex or having good dick with being toxic. And, I reached a point in my life where I said, you know what, before I ever get back into a relationship, I got to get my dick up to the toxic level. And I've done that, right? I've done that. It took some time. It took some work. Took some research, took some study, took some energy work, right? It took some actual skills I had to gain. Because I already knew plenty about sex, but I had to put that stuff into action, right? I had to put it into action. But what I told her to get out of that situation was this. And this is what I call the non-stick principle. The non-stick principle works like this, right? So one day I was having a conversation with her. And I said, if it's just like that, you just need to get you some new dick. And she was like, oh, I just have a special relationship to his dick. It's just like the best I had. I'm like, bitch, I done fucked you before. So, but all right, I was thinking to myself, like, I'm glad that I don't give a fuck or my feelings will be hurt right now. So part of the reason I was dealing with her at that time, or I was trying to deal with her, is because in my mind, I was like, one, I'm going to see if I can get my spot back. But two, I'm looking at it from a perspective of I need to grow accustomed to sleeping with the woman, knowing that she's had better sex with somebody else, and sleeping with the woman, knowing that she may be currently sleeping with somebody else. So I just had to get accustomed to that, so I wouldn't have an unrealistic or a bad emotional reaction to the idea of a woman sleeping with somebody else. Now, when this particular thing happened, I told her, probably not too long after that, I said, listen, you just felt that. No, I told her in that conversation, I said, you just feel that way because you and your feelings. And I was partially right. So maybe a couple weeks later, she was telling me about all the shit that was going on. So I told her like this. I said, listen, if you want that dick, take that dick. That's your dick. Enjoy it. Have fun with it. You know what I mean? Do your thing. But just make him wear a condom and don't let him spend a night. I taught her how to be a no-limit soldier, right? Now, this is how situations can work sometimes. It's called the non-stick principle, right? So it's let that hurt go, pussy. Often works on the non-stick principle. If you don't let that hurt go with the person, basically a positive form of trauma bonding, right? But if you don't let that hurt go with the person who you were with, then oftentimes you will be bottling up your sexual energy due to that hurt. You'll be repressing your sexual energy somewhat, and you're going to feel unsafe with the individual. But the next person who comes across, if they know how to play with your emotions the right way, then you're going to get wrapped up and invested in them. And then when that happens, you have sex with that individual, the non-stick principle happens. And if they take you to a new place sexually that the person before didn't take you to, then you damn near forget the person before. Now, this is something that a woman shouldn't overly use, right? Keep that shit to a bare minimum. But sometimes it's necessary, right? Sometimes that shit is necessary. But you got to keep it to a minimum. Because after a while, if your sexual palate gets raised too high, especially dealing with feminine dominant men, then you're going to be addicted to that emotional roller coaster that you go through due to being lied to and your emotions played with. And then after you get to that point, there are going to be some men who you could have been sexually compatible with, who you could have been compatible with for a relationship, who you're just going to get bored with, and then you're going to cheat on them, right? After you experience a certain level of dominance, you can't really go back to dealing with soft dudes and feel the same way about them. You can't really go back to dealing with dudes who are more, who communicate more healthily, who are more consistent without getting bored, right? But that's how the non-stick principle works. It's let that hurt go pussy. Now, the non-stick principle doesn't really work for a man the same way it works for a woman. It's more so a thing of if you're in your submissive sexual ego. Because for a man, oftentimes how it's going to work is like this. It's going to be a woman who's attractive, how well she treats you, how well she understands you, how well she gets with your program, but also how you feel about her, right? It's how you feel about that woman. And, men can act like that's not the case, but oftentimes it is. But for a woman, a lot of the times, sex is going to play a lot of a bigger role in how she feels about a man than how a man feels about a woman, right? That's just how it is a lot of the time. But in this particular situation, I said, you know what, just make him wear a condom. Don't let him spend the night. So 2 months later, she hit me up, talking about she just lost attraction to the dude. She just lost sexual attraction to him. She didn't even want to deal with him anymore. And then a couple weeks later, I was chilling. She hit me up out the blue, talking about, what you doing? I'm like, shit, I'm chilling. She talking about she horny. I'm like, all right, cool. What you gonna do? She's like, I don't know, probably nothing. So I was like, all right, cool. I can pull up. So I pulled up on her, went to her dorm. You know what I mean? At this school, this one college up here in South Carolina. And I pulled up and we had us a nice time, right? And that was really my first time experiencing Let That Hurt Go Dick. So I experienced Let That Hurt Go Dick with her when she was learning to separate sex from emotions, right? So, yeah, I was fucking her to her feelings and I was giving her some good work. I gave her some orgasms and stuff like that, which I hadn't done before. But most of those were just situations to where it was more so on a physical level of the pleasure I was giving her because a nigga kind of blessed, you know what I mean? And, I got some skills, I got certain shit that I can do. But she still implemented some of those principles with me. And that sometimes can happen when a woman gets into that no-limit soldier space. So, one thing you got to understand about a gentleman gigolo complex, and this is a little bit of a caveat, one thing to understand about a gentleman gigolo complex is that sometimes a woman will fuck with you not because she really desires you or because she really respects you. Sometimes a woman will fuck with you because she knows it won't be anything else, so she doesn't have to hold herself accountable for if it doesn't work out. Sometimes a woman will fuck with you just because you said you don't want to be anything but sex, right? Or just because you say you wouldn't want to be in a relationship with her. So even if you're friends with that particular woman or you were friends with that woman for years before then, something that can happen is the moment that sex gets involved, she's going to deal with you according to how much she respects and desires you. So if you try to have that same level of consistency that you had when you were, platonic friends, even if that was something that you were cool with, that's going to be something that turns her off and it's going to make her respect you less and be less attracted to you. Because she's going to feel as if the non-sexual companionship that you are sharing with one another is you attempting to play with her emotions and manipulate her, right? It's going to be something that it's going to make her feel unsafe and then she's going to pull away emotionally. That's just something to understand. Part of the reason she took that stance with me was because I was being petty. After she said that thing that she said about the dude, about how her special relationship to the dude's dick, we got on the phone one day and I said, I never wanted to date you. Now, I never told her that specifically, but I'm pretty sure she kind of got some of the gist. I never came at her on an angle where I was trying to date her. But, I just took that opportunity to throw a little dig in there. So that made it easy for her to say, okay, cool, this is only sex. I know I'm sexually attracted to the guy. I know the sex is going to be good. I know the dick's good. She started reminiscing on times that we had together. So we started dealing with one another. But the thing to understand about Let That Hurt Go Pussy and the non-stick principle is that if it's a dude who's actually good to you, or if it's a dude who actually communicates, who sets expectations, who's not trying to play with your feelings, who's really trying to fuck with you the long way, right? This is the reason why, right? If he does those things, right? If that's the energy that he has with you and the dick is good, you're enjoying it, then that non-stick principle is something that can fuck up your situation. One, if he's already emotionally invested in you, or if the relationship is prematurely integrated, it's going to put him into a stance to where he's going to lose some of his emotional discipline. Because if he's already invested emotionally, then he is going to feel some type of way, because subconsciously a man understands that a new level of pleasure often brings about a new place of authority. New pleasure often creates a new place of authority. And by authority, I just mean desiring the validation, being excited to hear from them, being excited to talk to them, wanting to sleep with them, wanting to deal with them, and that being the guilty pleasure that you want to go to in your most horny moments, right? And when you understand this principle, it's one of those things to where you have to protect your preferences. If you don't protect your preferences, then it's very easy to get into a position where you have a man who's giving you some good dick and he's giving you some guidance, but you might just trade that good dick and guidance for some better dick. Or you might trade it for falsely believe that some other dick is better for a short period of time and ruin the energy and the sexual polarity within your own relationship, creating a daddy versus father effect, because you're dealing with a man who he only has that effect on you sexually because of what appears to be emotional discipline, when really it's just emotional unavailability. And then that dude may play with your emotions, send you on an emotional roller coaster, and then after your emotions get up out of it, you realize that you don't feel the same way about that guy that you thought you did. The sex wasn't really as good as you thought it was. It's just you were in your emotions at the moment, right? So when you understand this type of scenario, there are certain circumstances where it's good, and there's certain circumstances where it's not good. And this is the reason that men who are prematurely integrated in relationships with women are very protective about the women when it comes to sex, right? Now, if when you first start dealing with a woman, you already know that she's dealing with other men, right? And she still knows how to prioritize you. She still knows how to, treat you like a priority. Her energy's good. She's excited to talk to you. When you want to set up a link up, she's going to find a way. And if she's not free, she's going to hit you up to see the very next time she can. See, if a woman is in that position and she still campaigns for a position, that's pretty much a woman you could be in an open relationship with, right? That's a woman who knows how to prioritize. But a woman who has never experienced a certain level of pleasure, if you are prematurely integrated, you are going to put a millstone around your neck when it comes to the capacity and how quickly you can create sexual polarity, and how quickly and how easy it will be for you to create sexual compatibility and sexual chemistry, right? Because if you spend a lot of time giving a woman non-sexual access to yourself and giving her validation, right? You give her, social validation, emotional validation, you give her your time, attention, your energy, your resources, then that can cause a woman to start becoming subconsciously transactional about those things that you add to the mix. So she may see the reason as you're doing that is because she's not being as sexual with you, and because she sees it as you're doing it because she's not being as sexual with you, it's going to put her into a perspective to where in order for her to feel like she wants to feel respected, she has to feel like she can't be too much of a slut. She can't be too much of a whore. She can't be too much of a nasty bitch with you, or your nasty bitch, your nasty hoe, right? Your slut. Because to her, the reason that you're treating her the way you are is because you don't see her that way. So by starting a relationship that way, being prematurely integrated, you automatically kind of put a damper on what the possibility for your sexual integration could be, because you're prematurely integrated. You put a hindrance on your ability to establish sexual compatibility and sexual chemistry when you start relationships in that particular way. And when a man understands that, then he knows that it's going to be a slower journey towards building a certain level of sexual compatibility and sexual chemistry. But if you have enough experience with women, you know that when you come straight out the gate with the sexual energy, right, and you establish your masculine energy, your dominance, you establish the sexual polarity before you get into integrating emotion into the relationship, then you put yourself into a scenario where often you can create high levels of sexual chemistry and high levels of sexual compatibility relatively quickly, right? And you could take her to new levels before she starts associating the idea of respect, before she starts associating the idea of developing a Madonna complex about how she sees you before she puts you into the gentleman box of the gentleman gigolo complex. I like to come at things from the gigolo complex first, or from the gigolo side, or at least let a woman think it's going to be like that a little bit, but then just show her that I have leadership skills. She'll begin to see certain things about my personality that attract her, that make her think that she would want to be with me. But I just don't believe in presenting yourself as the full package up front, because a woman is going to cling to whatever she desires at that particular moment. And if you present yourself as the full package up front, you may not know exactly what it is that she desires you for. And sometimes a woman can desire you simply because she wants sex, right? And sometimes a woman can choose you simply because she likes your personality, and she likes the validation, and she likes the way you make her feel emotionally and the attention that you give her. And if you don't know what it is that you're providing, you don't know if it's something masculine or if it's something feminine, right? You don't know if it's something dominant or something submissive, something that how she interprets it. And when you do things in that particular way, it can set yourself up to be in a bad spot. It can set yourself up to where if you decide you want to be more masculine, you decide you want to be more dominant, she may not be receptive to it. And then you're kind of in a bad spot, because you know in the back of your mind that if that woman encountered a different man, or maybe even you, right? And you don't know if she would have been receptive to you on that level, right? But if she encounters a man who has a certain level of energy with her, then chances are that's how she's going to be coming all over the place, right? You know, being prematurely integrated is something that can limit a woman's ability to have vaginal orgasms from penetration. It can limit her ability to be orgasmic, to be willing to give up control. It limits her ability to be feminine and submissive with you. Being prematurely integrated works in a variety of ways. So there's a reason that men who are prematurely integrated tend to come off as being more insecure. A lot of the times it's not because they're insecure, it's because there are insecurities in the relationship that they're trying to patch up, right? And if you're already in a relationship that's monogamous, right, or a woman is just dealing with you, and you're giving her the best pleasure that she's had up until that moment, but she's still not doing everything that you would like to do sexually, she's still not getting completely on your program, right? She's still not, but she adds value to your life. She's sweet to you. She's kind to you, right? She supports you. She supports your goals. She loves you. She might cook for you, care for you, different things like that. But that love and appreciation doesn't necessarily denote to that being respect and desire on a level of your masculinity and your dominance. And when a man is in that particular position, that's why a man will be afraid of the woman who he was prematurely integrated with starting to deal with other people, right? Because as you become more masculine and dominant in a relationship, or as you start to grow into yourself as a man, you're often in a position where the masculine and dominance that you start to exude, or that you try to integrate into the relationship, right? Because you didn't integrate it on the front end, it's going to start to make the woman feel reactant, or it's going to start to make the woman feel hurt, or it might start to make the woman feel as if, you know, she's unsure about certain things. She may feel like you're inconsistent. She may feel a variety of ways, because sometimes you know, right, that when a woman has a gentleman gigolo complex, you have to either start from the front with it, or you're going to have to integrate some toxicity into the mix in order to get her more sexually opened up. And that's something that often works. But the issue is this: when being toxic is something that makes that woman more sexually attracted to you, when being toxic with that woman after the fact opens her up to a level of sexuality that she wasn't able to show you when you were being good to her, then that makes you even more afraid of a man who will lead with that. It makes you even more afraid of a man who will lead with sexuality, that will lead with masculinity, that will lead with dominance. And it also makes you afraid of a lot of different things. Like that's fear that comes about because you understand that often a higher or a new level of pleasure, that novelty, that excitement, even if a woman is good to you, even if a woman loves you, even if a woman chooses you, that doesn't change the fact that if she has a gentleman gigolo complex, that novelty, excitement, newness, curiosity are going to be the main things that sexually excite her. So if you mix that with let that hurt go pussy, after a woman experiences that, then she's probably going to be done with you. She's probably not going to really be too worried about you anymore. She's probably not going to be too concerned with you, right? And then a woman who you're emotionally invested in is going to have experiences with a man to where you know that she's going to be talking shit, right, about you, because the man's going to be talking in their ear, right? As a man, if you didn't have game and then you gained game, you've been on both sides of this, right? I've been the rebound guy. I've been I've been on both sides of this shit. So when you've been on both sides of it, then you understand that when you lead things a particular way, it has a different effect on a woman, right? And when you've been like a side nigga, or you've been the rebound guy, or you've been a guy that a woman let that hurt go with, then what you understand is that oftentimes it's not even really about you. It's just about the timing and the scenario. And when you look at the timing and the scenario where a woman's just trying to come into herself and she's just trying to do something new, and she's just trying to let go of those boundaries and those standards and just try something new because what she did wasn't working before, you got to get that woman. If she's prematurely integrated and you still care for her, you still love her, you have to get her to a place where she experiences those things with you first, right? So fuck it, trauma bond, right? That's toxic, right? It is, but some people are in marriages like that, right? Some people are married in prematurely integrated relationships. I'd assume that most relationships are prematurely integrated. So when you understand that principle, what you understand is that, like, when you've been a side dude, or you've been like the maintenance man, you've played these different roles, then you've had conversations with women that very much stroked your ego and boosted you up when a woman was being honest with you about her sexual desires, her sexual experiences. She was being honest with you about the way she's felt in different scenarios, telling you, oh, I've never came like that before. Oh, I didn't know I could do that. She starts squirting. You know, it's a variety of things that may happen to where if you haven't had those experiences with a woman first, it's going to create a daddy versus father effect, because you may be unable to be willing to get back into the situation to continue going through that process of integrating when you're prematurely integrated, once that woman has had experiences that you couldn't do yourself. Because if you spent years with a woman, or a year or several months with a woman, and she didn't have certain sexual experiences with you, but then she meets somebody and within a couple of days, a couple hours, a couple weeks, she's doing everything that you wanted to do, then you're going to just determine that that's just how she feels about you, and you're not going to want to be in that situation anymore. And if you already love a woman, you see her as good, relationship or marriage material, but you're prematurely integrated and just see the potential and the capacity for it, then you're in a mindset and a perspective where you feel like, you know what, well, we might can make this work. I led this wrong from the beginning, so let me be the one to correct it. Let me take responsibility for it. But you have to understand that part of it is your ego that makes you willing to deal with that woman, even though part of sexuality is a challenge, right? Part of that is your ego. And that same ego that makes you willing to work things out is the same ego that will put your heart in your ass if she goes and experiences let that hurt go pussy with somebody else. And part of you also understands that if she has a gentleman gigolo complex, then she's repressing her sexuality, and it's just a matter of time before she expresses that repressed sexuality. And she just may not be comfortable with it with you because your relationship is already prematurely integrated. So your goal is really to get to the place where she can experience that with you before she gets to the place where she experiences that with someone else. And if it's a gentleman gigolo complex, then chances are the man she's going to feel that way about, have those experiences with, is not going to be someone who is going to be a long-term prospect. Oftentimes, it's not going to be a man who's really going to care for her. And when you understand that, then chances are after she gets her feelings hurt, she's going to come back to you, right? But at the same time, it may just be a situation where, let's say that's your baby mama, right? Then she fucks off, she does that. Now she's not even worried about your ass. Now you're going to have the emotional discipline to go back there, see if you can get your spot back, right? To fix the situation. Or are you going to be in a situation where you feel too hurt, right? You feel too hurt by what happened to be willing to that woman just becomes dead to you, right? She just becomes dead to you. And the fact that she'll be willing to take those chances is something that would, it'll hurt you. It's like, why are you playing with fire? Why are you taking those chances if you understand what the situation is? So a lot of people aren't honest about that, right? A lot of people, they try to give the impression that a man is going to be 100% secure all the time in every situation. Nah, oftentimes a man's security is based off of the return of investment, right? The return on investment of the time, energy, and effort he put into a woman, the emotion he put into a woman, versus the sexual submissiveness and the receptiveness to his masculinity and dominance that he got out of it. So when sexual polarity erodes, then it's like the sunk cost fallacy, right? The more time goes on, the more you're going to feel hurt by her having those experiences with somebody else quicker, which is very likely and very possible. Now, I have been in situations where I was able to my knowledge, integrate to a certain level sexually, establish a certain level of sexual chemistry and sexual compatibility after the fact. But there had to be a lot of boundaries and certain things like that in place to protect the woman or protect myself and to keep certain things from happening, because you got to understand what let that hurt go pussy is. So sometimes when you're in that situation, you like, nah, don't be hanging out with other dudes. Like, if he want to fuck you and that's you think that's your friend, he want to fuck you. That's not your friend. Stop acting stupid, right? Or why are you talking to this nigga when you know what he wants? Is that what you want to do? If that's what you want to do, then, we ain't got to deal with each other, right? Because I'm not about to sit here and watch you go through that and sit here and stick by you while it's going down. I'm not about to do that, right? But the issue is, if that woman comes to a place where she realizes and she comes to her senses and she's like, you know what? I do love this man. I do want to be with this man, but I just had these experiences. Then that's an experience where it is one of those things to where, how are you going to overcome your ego in that moment? How are you going to get to the place where you can be emotionally invested, right, without that being something that hurts you? And oftentimes you got to go into let that hurt go dick yourself. Sometimes you got to take that hurt to your ego, remove your emotions from it, and deal with that woman on a purely sexual level. And this is going to sound a little toxic, but sometimes you take the time she's played with fire, or the receptiveness that she's shown to other men, and times where she wasn't as receptive with you, and you let her know, like, hey, you use that to give you some nuts. You use that to give you some backbone. To say, hey, nah, this is what we doing. You're not doing this. I don't even really want to talk to you. I don't even want to deal with you. Because you're not going to be giving more time, attention, energy, access to someone else than you are to me when I'm emotionally invested in you. I mean, if that's how it is, then we can just part ways now, because I'm not doing it. I'm not going for it, right? And that's just like how a lot of let that hurt go pussy in the non-stick principle works. And there are reasons that a man's emotions get involved in that type of way. When you're prematurely integrated, that's something that happens. Now, oftentimes that hurt is going to come from a man being a cheater, right? Because oftentimes a man would cheat when a woman isn't giving him that sexual energy, and he has a Madonna whore complex, and he gives her a pass for not giving him that sexual energy just by dealing with other women. Now, if you're honest about it, you're going to have more leeway, more leverage with this. But if you're dishonest and you just cheat on a woman, right, then it's going to be a different type of scenario to where she's going to want to be spiteful about letting that hurt go. But the fear within all this is not losing the woman. The fear is that woman coming back to you different than you left her, and then having to deal with that ego hurt of knowing that she's experienced better dick with somebody else, having a false green flag of sexual compatibility, and then from that place, even if it disintegrates or sexual polarity erosion occurs, or she gets tired of the dude, she may become a no-limit soldier, she may become a sage burner, she may get to the place where she has to then choose you on a more logical basis, which will make her more masculine than she would if you were still at the peak of her sexual experiences, where she was more feminine about her desire for you, right? This is how overstimulation occurs. A new level of pleasure often creates a new place of authority. And when you understand this concept, you understand the reason why dudes are often very protective of that one ex, or dudes are often very protective of their baby mama. Dudes are often very protective of situations that are prematurely integrated, while that same man who's a woman's experiencing let that hurt go pussy with, he has emotional discipline. He doesn't care what he does, but that's because how he led the situation. It wasn't because he has some super level of emotional discipline. That's not what the case is. He led in a way to where he got that reciprocation of sexual energy before he got too emotionally invested, so he doesn't care what she does when he's not around. But when you're prematurely integrated, you don't have that privilege. So it's Brody, I'm out.